A reading from 1 Chronicles chapter 9. All the people of Israel were listed according to their families, and this information was recorded in the book of the kings of Israel. The people of Judah had been deported to Babylon as punishment for their sins. The first to return to their property in the cities included Israelite citizens, priests, Levites, and temple workers. People from the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh went to live in Jerusalem. There were 690 families of the tribe of Judah who lived in Jerusalem. The descendants of Judah's son Perez had as their leader Uthai, the son of Ammihud and grandson of Omri. His other ancestors included Imri and Bani. The descendants of Judah's son Shelah had as their leader Asaiah, who was the head of his family. The descendants of Judah's son Zerah had Jeuel as their leader. The following members of the tribe of Benjamin lived in Jerusalem: Sallu, son of Meshullam, who was the son of Hodaviah, the son of Hasenuah; Ibniah, son of Jeroham; Elah, the son of Uzzi and grandson of Mikri; Meshullam, son of Shephatiah, who was the son of Reuel, the son of Ibnijah. There were 956 families of this tribe living there. All the men named above were heads of families. The following priests lived in Jerusalem: Jedaiah, Jehoiarib, and Jakin; Azariah, son of Hilkiah, the chief official in the temple, whose ancestors included Meshullam, Zadok, Meraioth, and Ahitub; Adaiah, son of Jeroham, whose ancestors included Pashur and Malchijah; Maasai, son of Adiel, whose ancestors included Jazerah, Meshullam, Meshilemith, and Immer. The priests who were heads of families totaled 1,760. They were experts in all the work carried on in the temple. The following Levites lived in Jerusalem: Shemaiah, son of Hashub, whose ancestors included Azrikam and Hashabiah of the clan of Merari; Bakbakar, Heresh, and Galal; Mattaniah, son of Micah, whose ancestors included Zikri and Asaph; Obadiah, son of Shemaiah, whose ancestors included Galal and Jeduthun; Berechiah, the son of Asa and grandson of Elkanah, who lived in the territory that belonged to the town of Netophah. The following temple guards lived in Jerusalem: Shallum, Akub, Talmon, and Ahiman. Shallum was their leader. Down to that time, members of their clans had been stationed at the eastern entrance to the king's gate. Formerly, they had stood guard at the gates to the camps of the Levites. Shallum, the son of Kor and grandson of Ebiasaph, together with his fellow members of the clan of Korah, was responsible for guarding the entrance to the tent of the Lord's presence, just as their ancestors had been when they were in charge of the Lord's camp. Phinehas, son of Eleazar, may the Lord be with him, had supervised them at one time. Zechariah, son of Meshelemiah, was also a guard at the entrance to the tent of the Lord's presence. In all, 212 men were chosen as guards for the entrances and gates. They were registered according to the villages where they lived. It was King David and the prophet Samuel who had put their ancestors in these responsible positions. They and their descendants continued to guard the gates to the temple. There was a gate facing in each direction, north, south, east, and west, and each had a chief guard. These guards were assisted by their relatives who lived in the villages and who had to take turns at guard duty for 7 days at a time. The 4 chief guards were Levites and had the final responsibility. They were also responsible for the rooms in the temple and for the supplies kept there. They lived near the temple because it was their duty to guard it and to open the gates every morning. Other Levites were responsible for the utensils used in worship. They checked them out and checked them back in every time they were used. Others were in charge of other sacred equipment and of the flour, wine, olive oil, incense, and spices. But the responsibility for mixing the spices belonged to the priests. A Levite named Mattithiah, oldest son of Shallum of the clan of Korah, was responsible for preparing the baked offerings. Members of the clan of Kohath were responsible for preparing the sacred bread for the temple every Sabbath. Some Levite families were responsible for the temple music. The heads of these families lived in some of the temple buildings and were free from other duties because they were on call day and night. The men named above were heads of Levite families according to their ancestral lines. They were the leaders who lived in Jerusalem. Jael founded the city of Gibeon and settled there. His wife was named Maacah. His oldest son was Abdon, and his other sons were Zur, Kish, Baal, Ner, Nadab, Gedor, Ahio, Zechariah, and Mikloth, the father of Shemaiah. Their descendants lived in Jerusalem near other families of their clan. Ner was the father of Kish, and Kish was the father of Saul. Saul had 4 sons, Jonathan, Malchishua, Abinadab, and Eshbal. Jonathan was the father of Meribal, who was the father of Micah. Micah had 4 sons, Pithon, Melech, Tareah, and Ahaz. Ahaz was the father of Jarah, who was the father of 3 sons, Alameth, Azmaveth, and Zimri. Zimri was the father of Moza, Moza the father of Bineah, Bineah of Rephiah, Rephiah of Eleazar, and Eleazar of Azel. Azel had 6 sons, Azrikam, Bocheru, Ishmael, Sheariah, Obadiah, and Hanan. The word of the Lord. A reading from 1 Chronicles chapter 10. The Philistines fought a battle against the Israelites on Mount Gilboa. Many Israelites were killed there, and the rest of them, including King Saul and his sons, fled. But the Philistines caught up with them and killed 3 of Saul's sons, Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua. The fighting was heavy around Saul, and he was hit by enemy arrows and badly wounded. He said to the young man carrying his weapons, "Draw your sword and kill me, to keep these godless Philistines from gloating over me." But the young man was too terrified to do it. So Saul took his own sword and threw himself on it. The young man saw that Saul was dead, so he too threw himself on his sword and died. So Saul and his 3 sons all died together, and none of his descendants ever ruled. When the Israelites who lived in Jezreel Valley heard that the army had fled and that Saul and his sons had died, they abandoned their towns and ran off. Then the Philistines came and occupied them. The day after the battle, the Philistines went to plunder the corpses, and they found the bodies of Saul and his sons lying on Mount Gilboa. They cut off Saul's head, stripped off his armor, and sent messengers with them throughout Philistia to tell the good news to their idols and to their people. They put his weapons in one of their temples and hung his head in the temple of their god Dagon. When the people of Jabesh in Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, the bravest men went and got the bodies of Saul and his sons and took them to Jabesh. They buried them there under an oak and fasted for 7 days. Saul died because he was unfaithful to the Lord. He disobeyed the Lord's commands. He tried to find guidance by consulting the spirits of the dead instead of consulting the Lord. So the Lord killed him and gave control of the kingdom to David, son of Jesse. The word of the Lord.